The sky over Eden 7 turned red that morning. Not the beautiful red of a sunrise, but the angry red of incoming warships. Taeyang Quan watched the live feed from her command center on Earth, her jaw tight, her hands gripping the armrests of her chair. She had seen this before. Too many times before. On the screen, families ran through the streets of New Seoul, Eden 7's capital city. Parents carried children. The elderly stumbled and fell. Some people just stood there frozen, staring up at the massive alien vessels that blocked out the sun. They knew what was coming. Everyone knew what was coming. The Vorath had arrived. For 300 years, humanity had endured this. 300 years of raids, invasions, and broken promises. The Vorath came first, then the Reckoned, then others whose names didn't matter anymore. They all did the same thing. They took human worlds, human resources, human lives. And when humans begged the Galactic Council for help, the Council did nothing. Taeyang remembered her own colony's destruction. She had been 8 years old, hiding in a bunker while the Vorath burned everything above. She remembered the screams. She remembered 3 weeks of darkness alone with the bodies of her family. She remembered crawling out into ash and silence. Now she was an admiral. The admiral, supreme commander of what remained of humanity's military forces. And she was tired of remembering. Her communication officer spoke quietly. Governor Park was transmitting from Eden 7. Taeyang nodded, and the governor's face appeared on screen. He looked calm, too calm. That meant he knew it was over. The governor spoke directly to the Vorath fleet. His voice was steady and clear. He asked them to leave. He offered negotiations. He promised no resistance if they would just spare the civilians. And then he said the words that humanity had been saying for 3 centuries. Please don't make us angry. This is your last warning. The response came from Overlord Threnix himself. The Vorath commander's laugh echoed across all channels. Humans and their warnings, he said. Humans and their pathetic threats. He had been conquering human worlds for 40 years. Human warnings meant nothing. Humans were weak. Humans were prey. The first orbital strike hit 3 minutes later. Taeyang watched the city burn. She watched the buildings collapse. She watched people die in real time. Broadcast across military channels so every human commander could see. So they would all remember why they fought. So they would all understand what was at stake. Her second-in-command, Captain Hyun Nam, stood beside her chair. He had been a scientist once before the war. Before the Vorath enslaved his research team. Now he led humanity's special forces, the Ghost Corps. He didn't speak. There was nothing to say. The bombardment continued for 2 hours. When it stopped, Vorath troop carriers descended. They would take survivors as slaves. They always took survivors as slaves. The lucky ones died in the bombardment. Taeyang's communication panel lit up. The Terran Council was calling. All 7 members appeared on her screen, their faces grave. They all knew what this meant. Eden 7 had been humanity's largest colony, home to 12 million people. Now it was gone. The council president spoke first. They had debated for 300 years. They had tried diplomacy, tried peace, tried begging. Nothing worked. The galaxy saw kindness as weakness. It was time to show them the truth. The vote was unanimous. Code Black. Total War Protocol. Taeyang stood and walked to the wall behind her desk. It was covered in names. Every human killed by alien aggression. Millions of names. Billions, actually. But there wasn't enough wall space for billions. These were just the ones she knew personally. Her family was there. Her friends. Her first command crew. She touched the wall with one hand and whispered an apology. Not to the dead. They were past apologies. To herself. To the person she used to be. To the humanity she used to believe in. Then she turned and gave the order. Activate Operation Prometheus. Deep beneath the lunar surface in a facility that officially didn't exist. Dr. Mirai Song received the activation codes. She had built this facility. She had designed the weapons stored here. She had prayed for 3 decades that these codes would never come. Her hands shook as she entered them. Around her, other scientists worked in silence. They all knew what they were unlocking. They had all hoped this day would never arrive. But hope was a luxury humanity could no longer afford. The vault doors opened with a hiss of ancient hydraulics. Inside lay humanity's real military power. The technology they had been developing in secret for centuries. The weapons they had hidden while pretending to be weak, while pretending to lose. Mireille had lost her own family to Vorath raiders 5 years ago. Her husband. Her daughter. She remembered their faces every day. She had thrown herself into her work after that, building bigger weapons, better weapons, weapons that could make the aliens pay. Now those weapons were leaving the vault, being loaded onto ships, being armed and prepared for deployment. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, she just felt empty. Back on Earth, Taeyang stood on the bridge of her flagship. The ship had been named Mercy once. That name was being painted over. Its new name was Reckoning. Around Earth's orbit, more ships appeared. Hundreds of them. The Terran fleet had been hiding for generations, disguised as civilian vessels, broken hulks, orbital debris. Now they revealed themselves. Sleek warships with technology the galaxy had never seen. Weapons that humanity had spent 3 centuries perfecting while the aliens thought they were winning. Hyun Nam brought his Ghost Corps teams aboard. They would be the tip of the spear. The ones who infiltrated enemy positions. The ones who showed no mercy because they had been shown none. Among his pilots was Lieutenant Daehyun Park, a young hotshot who had been born during the occupation. Daehyun had never known peace. He had grown up in the refugee camps, learning to fly in simulators, dreaming of the day he could fight back. Now that day had come and he couldn't stop grinning. The fleet assembled. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier who had been waiting for this moment. Taeyang walked the bridge of her flagship, looking at the faces of her crew. Young and old, veterans and recruits, all of them angry, all of them ready. She opened a channel to every human ship, station, and colony. Her face appeared on billions of screens. When she spoke, her voice was cold and clear. For 300 years, we asked them to stop. We begged, we negotiated, we warned them. Please, we said, please don't make us angry. They laughed at our warnings. They thought we were weak. They thought wrong. The fleet began to move. Not toward Eden 7, it was too late for Eden 7. The fleet moved toward Vorath space, toward their home system, toward everything they held dear. Taeyang's final words echoed across the galaxy, broadcast on every frequency, translated into every language. You are all out of warnings. The Vorath called it the Day of Burning Sky. Humans just called it Tuesday. Overlord Threnix was reviewing casualty reports from Eden 7 when the alarm started. His command ship, the Eternal Fang, shuddered as something massive dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly above his homeworld. Then another. Then another. Then hundreds more. The human fleet had arrived. Threnix pulled up the tactical display and felt something he hadn't experienced in 40 years of warfare. Fear. The human ships were nothing like the outdated vessels his forces had been destroying for decades. These were predators, sleek, dark, and radiating power signatures that made Vorath sensors scream warnings. He opened a channel to the human flagship. Perhaps they would negotiate. Humans always negotiated. They were weak that way. Admiral Taeyang Kwan's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired, ancient. Her eyes held the kind of emptiness that came from seeing too much death. When she spoke, her voice carried no emotion at all. You have 60 seconds to evacuate your ships. After that, we fire. There will be no negotiation, no surrender, no mercy. Threnix started to respond, to explain that she was making a mistake, that his fleet outnumbered hers 3-1. The channel closed before he could speak. 55 seconds remained. He did not evacuate. He was Vorath. Vorath did not run. He gave the order to attack. His fleet fired first. Missiles, energy weapons, kinetic rounds. Everything they had. The human ships didn't even try to dodge. They didn't need to. The weapons simply stopped working. Missiles veered off course or detonated early. Energy beams bent away as if hitting invisible walls. Kinetic rounds slowed and stopped in mid-space. Then the humans fired back. The first weapon they used seemed impossible. It bent gravity itself, crushing Vorath warships like empty cans. Metal screamed and tore. Ships that had survived 100 battles crumpled in seconds. Threnix watched 3 of his best cruisers collapse into spheres of twisted metal. Their crews killed instantly by forces that no living thing could survive. The second weapon was worse. It targeted matter at the atomic level, causing ships to simply come apart. Not explode, not burn, just dissolve into component atoms. Vorath warriors died without even understanding what was happening. One moment they existed. The next, they were dust scattered across space. Threnix tried to retreat. His remaining ships turned to run. That was when the human fighters appeared. Lieutenant Daehyun Park led Valkyrie Squadron through the Vorath formation, like a knife through flesh. His fighter moved in ways that should have killed him from the acceleration, turned at angles that should have torn his ship apart. His weapons never missed. Every shot, every burst, every missile found its target. He laughed the entire time. Combat recordings would later show him laughing as Vorath ships exploded around him, laughing as he dodged return fire, laughing as he killed the same warriors who had murdered his parents when he was 6 years old. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the Vorath defense fleet was gone. 3,000 ships reduced to wreckage and radiation. Human casualties, 0. Threnix survived because his command ship had the best shields. Barely. Half his crew was dead. The other half wished they were. He stared at the tactical display showing human ships in perfect formation, untouched, waiting. He finally understood. The humans had been losing on purpose. For 300 years they had let the Vorath win, let them feel superior, let them grow arrogant, all while building weapons in secret, all while studying Vorath tactics, all while waiting for the right moment. This was the moment. While the fleet destroyed Vorath ships, Captain Hyon Nam and his Ghost Corps infiltrated the planet below. They moved through Vorath military installations like shadows, silent, precise, deadly. They weren't there to kill everyone. They were there to send a message. Hyon Nam had been a scientist once. He understood Vorath biology, Vorath psychology, Vorath culture. He knew exactly how to hurt them. Not with weapons, with truth. His team uploaded files to every network on the planet. Video files, audio files, records, 3 centuries of human suffering. Children torn from parents. Families separated and sold. Humans dying in slave camps. Humans begging for mercy that never came. Every screen on Vorath Prime showed these images. Every communication device broadcast human screams. For 72 hours, the Vorath people saw what their military had done, what they had cheered for, what they had called glorious conquest. Some Vorath looked away. Some felt shame. Most felt fear. Because if humans could do this, what else could they do? They got their answer when Admiral Kwan gave the final order. Dr. Mireille Song watched from Earth as her greatest creation prepared to fire. The Prometheus weapon, a device that could reach into a star and pull out its fury. She had designed it. She had built it. She had hoped to never see it used. The target was a moon orbiting a red dwarf star. The moon held Vorath military command. 3 billion Vorath lived there, soldiers mostly, but also their families, their children, their homes. Mireille's hand hovered over the activation key. She thought of her daughter, her sweet girl who loved music and flowers, who died screaming in a Vorath raid. She thought of her husband who tried to protect them and died for it. She pressed the key. The red dwarf star convulsed. Its surface erupted in a solar flare larger than anything in recorded history. The flare reached out like a hand of fire and grabbed the moon. The atmosphere burned away in seconds. The surface melted. The crust cracked and shattered. Everything on that moon died before they even knew they were dying. 3 billion Vorath. Gone. Just gone. The galaxy watched. Every species with sensors pointed at Vorath space saw it happen. They saw the impossible. They saw humans reach into a star and turn it into a weapon. They saw what 3 centuries of human patience and human genius had created. They were terrified. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Ambassador Velamora from the Quilix Federation tried to speak, tried to call for calm, tried to suggest negotiation. Nobody listened. They were too busy calculating how quickly they could evacuate their own home systems. On his damaged command ship, Overlord Threnix finally managed to open a communication channel to the human fleet. He was ready to surrender, ready to offer anything, ready to beg. Taeyang Kwan appeared on his screen again. He started to speak, to plead for his people. She raised one hand. He fell silent. Did they beg? Did our children beg when you took them? Did our families beg when you destroyed their homes? Did we beg when we asked you to stop? Threnix had no answer. You will surrender your remaining military forces. You will release every human slave. You will pay reparations, or we will turn your son into your funeral pyre. You have 1 day to decide. The channel closed. Threnix sat in his command chair surrounded by the dead and dying, and knew that his people's age of conquest was over. The prey had become the predator. The weak had revealed themselves as strong, and the galaxy would never be the same. News of the Vorath defeat spread through the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every species knew. Humanity was no longer prey. Humanity was death-walking. The Reckon Trade Consortium heard the news and panicked. For 200 years, they had profited from human slavery. They bought and sold human families like livestock. They built their fortune on human suffering. Now they scrambled to erase evidence, to hide records, to pretend they had never participated. It was too late. Captain Hyan Nam already had all the evidence he needed. The Reckon government sent ambassadors to Earth. They offered apologies. They offered reparations. They offered anything humans wanted. Please, they said. Let us negotiate. Admiral Taiyang Quan's response arrived 3 days later. Not words, a broadcast. Every communication device in Reckon space began playing the same thing. Video recordings from slave auctions, humans being inspected like animals, children crying as they were torn from parents, families separated forever, all recorded by the Reckon themselves, proud documentation of their profitable trade. The recordings played on a loop, every screen, every speaker, every communication channel. For 3 days straight, the Reckon people watched what their merchants had done, what their government had allowed, what they had all ignored. On the 4th day, the human fleet arrived. The Reckon had no military to speak of. They were traders, not warriors. They relied on others for protection. Now those others were too afraid to help. The Reckon stood alone against the humans they had enslaved. Taiyang Quan gave them the same offer she gave the Vorath. Surrender everything. Free every slave. Pay for every crime. Or die. They surrendered in hours. But humanity wanted more than surrender. They wanted justice. They wanted the galaxy to understand that there were consequences. Real consequences. 3 smaller species had participated in raids on human colonies. Species whose names humans barely remembered because they were so insignificant. Now those species received a message from Admiral Quan. A simple message. 48 hours to evacuate your home worlds. After that, we sterilize them. The galaxy reacted in horror. This was genocide. This was extinction. This was exactly what those species had tried to do to humans, but nobody seemed to remember that part. Ambassador Velamora of the Quillix Federation went before the Galactic Council. She pleaded for intervention. She reminded them that they had the power to stop this, that they had a moral obligation. The Council refused. They were too afraid. Humanity could turn stars into weapons. Humanity could destroy their ships without taking damage. Humanity had spent 3 centuries preparing for this. Who could stop them? Only one of the 3 species managed to evacuate in time. The other 2 hesitated. They debated. They tried to negotiate. They thought humans were bluffing. They were wrong. Dr. Mireille Song watched from Earth as the Prometheus weapons fired again, twice. 2 stars convulsed and erupted. 2 worlds burned. 2 entire species reduced to ash and memory. She tried to tell herself it was necessary. They had attacked human colonies. They had killed human families. They deserved this. But her hands shook as she entered the firing sequences, and she couldn't stop seeing their faces on the surveillance feeds, the ones who didn't evacuate in time, the ones who died, screaming. They looked like her daughter had looked, terrified and confused, wondering why someone wanted to hurt them. She threw up after the second firing. Her staff pretended not to notice. On the other side of the galaxy, Lieutenant Daehyun Park faced his first moral crisis. His squadron had been ordered to destroy a convoy of Reckon transport ships. Military targets, command said. Enemy combatants fleeing justice. Daehyun locked his weapons on the lead transport. His targeting computer showed him everything inside. Hundreds of life signs. He zoomed in with his cameras, expecting to see soldiers. He saw families, parents holding children. Elderly Reckon huddled together, civilians trying to escape the war. Fire, his commander ordered. Weapons free. Daehyun's finger rested on the trigger. He had dreamed of this moment his entire life. Revenge for his parents. Justice for every human who had suffered. He had killed so many already. Why did these feel different? Because they're running, he realized. Not fighting, not attacking. Just running. He didn't fire. His wingmate did. The transport ships exploded in bright flowers of flame. Daehyun watched them die and felt nothing but sick. When they returned to base, he was arrested for disobeying orders. His commander wanted him executed as an example. Admiral Kwan intervened and reduced his sentence to imprisonment and demotion. But the damage was done. Other young soldiers heard about it. They started asking questions. Are we the good guys anymore? While humanity's war machine rolled forward, something unexpected happened. Overlord Threnix, imprisoned on a human ship, requested a meeting with Captain Hyun Nam. His guards were suspicious. His people had tried to assassinate human officers before, but Hyun Nam agreed. He had questions only Threnix could answer. They met in a small room. No weapons, no guards. Just two soldiers from different species facing each other across a table. Threnix spoke first. He offered information, locations of hidden military bases, supply routes, strategic weaknesses. Everything Hyun Nam needed to end this war faster. In exchange, he asked for one thing: spare the children. Whatever humanity did to the Vorath, whatever punishment they deserved, spare the children who had nothing to do with any of it. Hyun Nam studied the Vorath commander. This was the same being who had led raids on human colonies, who had given orders that killed thousands, who had laughed at human warnings. Now he was begging for mercy. The same mercy he had refused to show. I can't promise anything, Hyun Nam said finally, but I'll give your information to Admiral Kwan. Maybe it will make a difference. Threnix nodded. It was more than he expected, more than he deserved. Meanwhile, the human fleet arrived at the Galactic Council's central system. Not to attack, just to make a point. They entered orbit around the Council homeworld and deployed a Prometheus weapon. The Council panicked. They had refused to help humanity for 3 centuries. Now humanity had come to their door with the power to destroy them. Admiral Kwan's message was broadcast to every council member. We asked for help. You ignored us. We asked for protection. You abandoned us. We asked for justice. You gave us nothing. Now we're not asking anymore. She activated the Prometheus weapon. Not to fire, just to show them it was there. Ready. Waiting. The Council's star erupted in a massive solar flare, visible from every world in their system, a demonstration of power, a reminder that humanity could end them all whenever they chose. The Council surrendered everything, recognized human sovereignty, agreed to reparations, offered seats on the Council. Whatever humans wanted. Just please don't fire. Taeyang Kwan accepted their surrender. But as she stood on her bridge, watching the Council worlds panic below, she felt no triumph. Only emptiness. They had won. Humanity had finally won. So why did victory taste like ashes? 6 months after the war ended, Admiral Taeyang Kwan returned to Eden 7, the world where everything had started, the world where humanity's patience had finally broken. The planet was being rebuilt. Human construction crews worked alongside Vorath prisoners of war, former enemies now forced to cooperate, rebuilding what the Vorath had destroyed. It should have felt like justice. Instead, it just felt sad. Taeyang walked through the memorial site where New Seoul had once stood. They had left the ruins as they were. A reminder, 12 million people had died here. Now their names covered walls that stretched for kilometers. Someone had spray-painted graffiti on one of the walls. Taeyang stopped to read it. We wanted peace. They gave us war. Did we have to become them? The question hit her like a physical blow. Did we have to become them? She had asked herself the same thing every night for 6 months. She still didn't have an answer. Her communicator buzzed. Captain Hyun Nam was requesting a meeting. Urgent, he said. She sighed and headed back to her shuttle. They met in a secure conference room on the flagship. Hyun Nam looked worse than she had ever seen him. His eyes were hollow. His hands trembled slightly. He had discovered something. Something bad evidence, he said quietly. Evidence of war crimes. committed by human forces. He showed her the files. Video recordings from human ship cameras. Vorath soldiers trying to surrender. Human troops shooting them anyway. Alien civilians executed in the streets. Prisoners tortured for information they didn't have. Some of the worst incidents happened under units in her own command chain. Officers she had promoted. Soldiers she had trained. Good people, she had thought. Turned into monsters by war. Or maybe they had always been monsters. Maybe the war just gave them permission. What do you want to do? She asked Hyun-nam. He met her eyes. The right thing. Court-martial them. Make it public. Show the galaxy that we hold ourselves accountable. The Terran Council will never allow it, Taeyang said. They'll say it makes us look weak. That it undermines our position. Then the Council is wrong, Hyun-nam replied. If we don't hold ourselves accountable, we're no better than the Vorath. We become exactly what we were fighting against. He was right. She knew he was right. But knowing something and doing something were different things. Give me time, she said finally. Let me think about this. While Taeyang wrestled with her conscience, Lieutenant Daehyun Park sat in a military prison. He had been stripped of his rank and locked away for refusing to kill civilians. His court-martial had been quick. His sentence was 5 years, but something unexpected happened. His case became famous. Young soldiers heard about it. They started asking questions. Started refusing orders that didn't sit right. Started demanding that humanity act like the victims they claimed to be, not like the oppressors they had defeated. A movement formed. Peace advocates. Veterans who had seen too much. Civilians who wanted humanity to be better than its enemies. They rallied around Daehyun's words from his trial. We can't defeat monsters by becoming monsters ourselves. The Terran Council tried to suppress the movement. They arrested protest leaders. They censored media reports. They painted peace advocates as traitors. It didn't work. The movement grew. Meanwhile, Dr. Mireille's song was falling apart. She couldn't sleep anymore. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw them. The worlds she had burned. The billions of lives her weapons had ended. She had built the Prometheus weapons to protect humanity. Instead, she had given humanity the power to commit genocide, her colleagues noticed. They recommended therapy, medication, rest, nothing helped. The nightmares kept coming. One night, she broke into her own laboratory. She was going to destroy the Prometheus weapon designs, erase them from existence, make sure humanity could never use them again. Security stopped her before she could finish. Military intelligence arrested her. They said she was having a breakdown. They said she needed help. What they meant was that she knew too much and couldn't be allowed to destroy valuable military assets. She was placed under medical supervision. House arrest, they called it. For her own safety. The galaxy was changing too. Ambassador Velmora published a report that shocked everyone. The Galactic Council could have stopped the persecution of humanity. Multiple times. They had the power, the military strength, the authority. They simply chose not to. Why? Because it would set a bad precedent. Because it might require them to intervene in other conflicts. Because it was easier to let humans suffer than to risk Council resources helping them. The report caused chaos. Council member species turned on each other. Some demanded accountability. Others defended their inaction. Civil wars nearly broke out on Council worlds as populations realized their governments had enabled genocide through calculated indifference. Velmora's own government censured her, stripped her of her position, called her a traitor. She didn't care. She had spent 3 centuries watching humans suffer, while her government did nothing. She was done staying silent. Then came the trial of Overlord Threnix. The entire galaxy watched as the Vorath commander stood before a human tribunal. They expected him to defend himself. To claim he was just following orders. To show no remorse, instead he confessed to everything. Every raid, every slave taken, every human killed under his command. He didn't try to justify it. He didn't ask for mercy, but he did offer an explanation. The Vorath had misunderstood human diplomacy. When humans offered peace, the Vorath thought it was submission. When humans asked them to stop, the Vorath thought it was begging from a weaker species. They had been wrong, catastrophically wrong, but by the time they realized it, the cycle of violence had already begun. It wasn't an excuse. It was just the truth. A stupid, tragic truth about how misunderstanding and arrogance had led to 3 centuries of suffering. The tribunal sentenced him to death. He accepted it without argument. He asked only one thing. that his testimony be used to prevent future wars. That species learned to understand each other before they destroy each other. The day before his execution, Taiyang Quan visited him in prison. She didn't know why. Maybe she wanted closure. Maybe she wanted to see remorse in his eyes. Maybe she just wanted to understand. They sat across from each other, the killer and the avenger, the war criminal and the admiral who had brought him to justice. "My family died because of you," she said. "I know," he replied. "I'm sorry. It changes nothing, but I'm sorry." "No," she agreed. "It doesn't change anything, but maybe it's a start." They sat in silence after that. Two beings who had caused each other unimaginable pain, who had destroyed each other's worlds, who had done terrible things in the name of their people. Finally, Threnix spoke again. "If I could go back, I would do everything differently. But I can't, none of us can. All we can do is try to make sure the next generation doesn't repeat our mistakes." Taiyang left the prison with those words echoing in her mind. She made her decision that night. She went before the Terran Council. She presented Hyunam's evidence of human war crimes. She demanded full investigations and public trials. She told them that if humanity wanted to claim moral superiority, they had to earn it. The council was furious. They called her a traitor. They tried to remove her from command. That's when something remarkable happened. The fleet refused. Every captain, every officer, every crew member stood behind their admiral. If the council wanted to remove her, they would have to fight the entire Terran fleet. The council backed down. They authorized the investigations. Justice would be served even if it hurt, especially because it hurt. The galaxy held its breath. Humanity had won the war. Now they had to decide what kind of victors they would be. Admiral Taiyang Quan stood before the reformed Galactic Council. Every species in known space watched this moment. The human admiral who had burned worlds, the woman who had turned stars into weapons, the last warning made flesh. She had spent 3 months preparing this speech. 3 months arguing with human leadership about what to propose. 3 months asking herself what kind of future she wanted to build. Half of humanity wanted permanent dominance, military occupation of former enemy worlds, Forath reduced to servant species, Haken forbidden from ever trading again, a galaxy ruled by human fear, secured by human weapons. The other half wanted something else, something harder, something that required more courage than war ever did. Peace. Real peace. Taiyang began her speech. She didn't sugarcoat history. She detailed every crime committed against humanity, every colony destroyed, every family separated, every human slave who died alone and forgotten. The council listened in silence. They couldn't argue. The evidence was overwhelming. But then she did something unexpected. She detailed human crimes too. The civilian transports destroyed, the prisoners executed, the worlds burned in revenge. She named names, showed footage, held her own people accountable in front of the entire galaxy. "This is what war does," she said. "It turns victims into killers. It turns defense into revenge. It turns people into the monsters they once feared." She proposed the Accord of Remembrance, a treaty that required all signatories to maintain memorials to their war crimes, not just to honor their own dead, but to remember the dead they caused. Humans would remember the Vorath civilians killed in bombardments. Vorath would remember the human slaves who died in their camps. Every species would face their own darkness. More than that, she proposed disarmament, mutual disarmament. Humanity would destroy the Prometheus weapons. Other species would reduce their militaries. Everyone would step back from the edge of extinction together. The galaxy was stunned. Humanity held all the power. They could demand anything. Instead, they were offering peace. The Vorath representative spoke first. The new Vorath government was reformist, led by beings who had opposed the old military regime. They agreed immediately. They would dismantle their entire military. They would become a peaceful species. Anything to avoid extinction. Other species followed. One by one, they agreed to the accord. They didn't trust humans, but they trusted human weapons even less. Better to build peace than to wait for the next war. But not all humans agreed. A faction within the Terran military saw the accord as surrender. They had fought for 3 centuries. They had lost everything. Now, just when they finally had the power to make the aliens pay forever, humanity wanted to forgive. No, they wouldn't allow it. The attempted coup came during the accord signing ceremony. Hardline military officers seized control of 3 warships. Their target was the Vorath homeworld. They were going to destroy it. Show the galaxy that humanity's mercy had limits. Taeyang received the alert minutes before the rogue ships jumped to faster than light. She faced a choice. Let them go and maintain human unity, or stop them and risk civil war. She chose to stop them. The loyal fleet intercepted the rogue ships before they reached Vorath space. The battle was brief and brutal. Human weapons against human ships. Human soldiers killing human soldiers. The nightmare they had all feared. When it ended, the rogue ships were destroyed. Over 3,000 human military personnel died. Killed by their own fleet. Killed for trying to continue the war. Taeyang broadcast a message to all of humanity. Her voice was heavy with grief but firm with resolve. We warned them not to make us angry. For 300 years we warned them. They didn't listen. They learned the hard way what humans are capable of when pushed beyond endurance. But now we must warn ourselves. We must remember what we're capable of, and we must choose every day not to become the monsters that war created. The war is over, not because we lost, not because we were defeated, but because we choose to end it. That choice is the hardest thing humanity has ever done, but it's the only choice that leads to a future worth living. The message resonated, not with everyone. Some humans would never forgive, never forget, never move on, but enough agreed. Enough chose peace. Enough decided that revenge was a poison that would destroy humanity from within. Captain Hyan Nam was appointed as humanity's chief diplomatic officer. His first act was to release Lieutenant Daehyun Park from prison and make him his deputy. The young pilot who had refused to kill civilians became a symbol of humanity's new direction. Daehyun's first assignment was to visit Vorath worlds, to meet with families who had lost loved ones in human attacks, to listen to their pain, to offer no excuses, only acknowledgement. It was the hardest thing he had ever done, harder than combat, harder than prison, facing the people he had harmed, looking into their eyes, seeing their grief, understanding that from their perspective he was the monster. But it was necessary. Both sides needed to see each other as people, not as enemies. As beings with families, hopes, fears. As someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. Dr. Mireille Song was released from medical supervision with one condition. She had to help dismantle the Prometheus weapons. Every single one. She agreed immediately. The dismantling was broadcast across the galaxy. Humanity's most powerful weapons. The devices that had turned stars into bombs being carefully taken apart. The technology studied and recorded so it could never be forgotten, but also so it could never be used again. Mireille destroyed the last prototype herself. She set it to detonate in deep space far from any inhabited system. The explosion was visible for light years, a final demonstration of what humanity was giving up, a symbol of their commitment to peace. As she watched the explosion fade, she thought of her daughter. Her sweet girl who had loved flowers and music, who had died too young, too scared, too violently. I avenged you, she whispered to the stars. But revenge didn't bring you back. It didn't make the pain stop. It just created more pain. More children without parents. More parents without children. Maybe this is better. Maybe this is what you would have wanted. Not revenge. Just an end to the suffering. The Accord of Remembrance was ratified by every major species in the galaxy. It wasn't perfect. Many humans felt betrayed. Many aliens felt the punishment was insufficient. But it was a start. Overlord Threnix's execution was stayed at the last moment. New evidence showed that he had secretly prevented several genocidal attacks on human colonies. He had convinced other Vorath commanders to take slaves instead of killing everyone. It wasn't mercy. It was just slightly less evil. But it was something. His sentence was reduced to life imprisonment. He would spend his remaining years teaching young Vorath about the horrors of war, about the importance of communication, about how easily good intentions could lead to atrocity. Ambassador Velamora was nominated for the Terran Peace Prize. She declined, saying she didn't deserve recognition for doing what should have been done centuries ago. Instead, she nominated the Joint Human-Vorath Committee working on reconciliation. They accepted on behalf of everyone trying to build peace from the ashes of war. The galaxy began to heal, slowly, painfully, with setbacks and failures and moments of despair. But it healed. On Eden 7, the first memorial was completed. It listed names from all sides. Human victims of Vorath aggression, Vorath victims of human revenge, side by side, equal in death if not in life. At the dedication ceremony, Taiyang Quan stood beside a Vorath elder who had lost 3 children in the human bombardment. They didn't speak. There were no words that could bridge that gap. But they stood together, sharing grief if not understanding. It was enough. For now it was enough. Later that night, Hyun Nam sat in his office and opened his philosophical journal. He hadn't written in it since the war began. Now he picked up his pen and wrote a single entry. We asked them not to make us angry. They did anyway. We showed them what human anger could do. We burned worlds. We killed billions. We became everything we swore we would never be. And then we stopped. Not because we were forced to, not because we lost, but because we chose to. That choice, that moment of restraint after unlimited power, defines us more than all our victories. Anger is easy. Forgiveness is strength. But remembering, truly remembering what we're capable of while choosing not to do it, that is wisdom. He closed the journal and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, former enemies were learning to coexist. Former victims were learning to forgive. Former killers were learning to heal. It wouldn't be easy. It would never be easy. But it was possible. And possibility was all anyone needed.